With the Ottawa Senators signing Jake Sanderson to a massive extension, what could that mean for Kaiden Guhle? We're going to be talking about what we think he might get in his next contract extension. Plus, David Reinbacher's player card from JFresh compares extremely well to some other draft prospects that were available to Montreal. And finally, we got to talk a little bit about an ex-Habs, an ex-All-Star who spoke out about how much he regrets leaving the organization. So you'll want to stick around for this edition of Habs Digest. Jesse, let's dive right into this. And this former Hab is Alex Kovalev. In a recent interview, he said he regrets leaving Montreal, and in essence here, he basically says, the organization, I felt like they weren't respecting me as much as I deserved it, but he said he felt good in general in Montreal, and he said he regrets leaving for Ottawa, and he should have signed with Montreal in 2009. It would have been better for him and his family, and honestly, he said he owes it to the fans for his success. So, Jesse, I mean, Alex Kovalev was fantastic, phenomenal, Mr. Silky Hands himself. Like, he was so good for Montreal. I know a lot of fans were sad when he left in 2009, but it's kind of cool to hear from him now revisiting this whole moment that he really thinks he should have stayed.
And I get where he's coming from as well. You know, he had so much skill, and I think so many Habs fans definitely enjoyed watching him play. And what's nice, one of my favorite things from just this article is he says the fans were really responsible for my success. The fans really brought out the best in me, and even just playing for a franchise that just has such a tremendous history and everything else, just feeling so at home in the city. And of course, you know, the fans probably brought out the best in him in his play and everything else. And it's just so nice. You have to think that us as fans that, you know, that we can have that effect on players. And even for some of our young stars, maybe, you know, with our support, even that, you know, we can take their potential and we can even just improve on that just by our encouragement and just, you know, believing in these good players that do have talent.
Yeah, and, you know, David Reinbacher is a good example. A lot of Habs fans were upset, but the praise he's gotten since then has been amazing. But yeah, Kovalev was one of those guys that, you know, maybe he wasn't at 100% all the time giving his 100% effort, but you know, when the fans were into it, he was into it. They really boosted his play, and man, he was fun to watch. But speaking of David Reinbacher, we got to get into this. So Reinbacher could be a future star. I mean, this is not anything new. However, we wanted to take a look back at the JFresh card for David Reinbacher for his draft position. They have him at, just a reminder, guys, 99 projected chance of becoming a full-time NHLer, 66% projected chance of becoming a star. NHL ranked 10 for both. This is data from Elite Prospects, the NHLE model from Top Down Hockey. He is elite. He is an excellent defenseman, and I know you guys don't need that reminder, but let's compare him to someone that a lot of Habs fans were thinking, hey, maybe we should pick this guy in Ryan Leonard. You guys maybe have not seen this card, but he only has a 58% chance of becoming an NHLer, 16% chance of becoming a star. Now, I will say, Jesse, these models are a bit flawed, of course, and I will also say Michkov was 100% for both of them, and he was ranked number 1 in their model, so fair enough. But at the same time, picking the best defenseman in a draft, especially one that is almost guaranteed to be solid and has a greater than 50% chance at, according to this model, becoming a star, you can almost never go wrong. And I feel like comparing him to some of the other guys that the Habs wanted to draft just paints that picture a little clearer.
It's very true. And you got to appreciate this model from JFresh once again, because his game just looks like it's going to translate so well to the NHL. Like, as a defenseman, of course, you know, playing good defensively is so important, but then he has that offensive upside, which I think will really kind of come out in the future. And I mean, a 66% chance of becoming an all-star, like, that's more than likely, right? That's what's going to happen according to this model. And honestly, I do see a world, you know, with that happening, just with his mobility, his compete level, of course, that offensive part of his game. My question to you, Josh, is, do you believe first that he will become an NHL all-star at a certain point in his career? And if so, how long do you think it would take him to become that?
My problem with this is that while Reinbacher is very good offensively and defensively, I feel like his style of play, at least from what we've seen, maybe isn't conducive to the fans or the you know, media voters to vote him in. He's maybe not the most flashy player. However, you see lots of guys who maybe aren't flashy make the team. So in my opinion, though, I think he will be an all-star. I think I've said that before. I truly think Reinbacher is going to be an all-star. And if he does, I say within his first 4 seasons, because he's 18 at this point, right? You're not often an all-star when you're super young, but I mean, by the time he's 22 or 23, if things go well, I think he really could be there. And Jesse, I wanted to mention one other thing that someone brought up today when I was looking at this article. David Reinbacher was the first defenseman picked in this draft, best defenseman in this draft. If the Habs had picked the best defenseman in the Kotkaniemi and the Galchenyuk drafts, they would have had Quinn Hughes or Morgan Rielly. So, what do you think of that? Do you think maybe we could see something like that going on with David Reinbacher?
Well, it just goes to show that kind of going for that defender, kind of the best available one in the entire draft, right? It is often has proved to be a really solid move. And again, many teams have kind of built their way when they're kind of looking to really do that rebuild again. It's a really smart place to look again for that reason as well. But, more important than the position that he plays, it's just a player where his style of play, like we're saying, even coming into training camp as a rookie, so young, we just know he's going to have a great training camp just because of the type of game that he plays is being so intelligent, right? Having that size, everything else, right? So it's a player where it's like, you could say, oh, it was just a safe bet because he's going to make the NHL. But I think it's more than just that. I think it's a foregone conclusion that this is a type of player that makes the NHL, but not only that, has the potential to be really good. Like you said, not super flashy, but if he's able to kind of unlock that offensive capabilities, possibly being, matched up with whether it's Guhle or Hudson or something like that, I believe either one of these players could really complement, especially Hudson. I could see that taking his game to the next level and kind of, definitely accentuating and accelerating his run to be an NHL All-Star.
Yeah, it could be great. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what he does. I'd love to see him in Montreal this year, even though I think sending him back to Switzerland's the best choice, but we'll just have to wait and see. But there's another defenseman we got to talk about, Jesse. Another left-handed guy that maybe might be a partner for David Reinbacher in the future, and that is Kaiden Guhle. And if you guys weren't aware, Ottawa Senators standout young defenseman Jake Sanderson signed a massive contract last night. 8 years, $64.4 million. That's just over $8 million AAV. He's 21-year-old American, 4 goals, 28 assists in 77 games as a rookie. He was ranked second in scoring among the team's blue liners. And Jesse, Jake Sanderson is... he's a solid player. He's 21. He's an excellent skater, very good offensive player, and some great breakout passes from him. While he's maybe not the best defender, he's definitely not a huge negative in that department. But I wanted to compare him. Take a look at his stats. That's 0.42 points per game to Kaiden Guhle at 0.4 points per game. The same amount of goals in many fewer games, same height, 20 pounds heavier, only 6 months older than Jake Sanderson. Jesse, these two defenders are incredibly comparable, and as Nicolas Cloutier says, we got to talk about this. Sanderson has a greater potential than Guhle for sure, but he's not in a complete another league. Guhle is one of the best skaters in the league too. He had one of the top speeds in the NHL last year. And finally, in a response tweet, he says he thinks Guhle, one of the commenters that says Guhle could get 6.5 if Sanderson's worth 8, while Cloutier doesn't agree with the guy's point on Xhekaj at 4.5 per. Kaiden Guhle at 6.5 is not ridiculous, and I wanted to mention this to you. Do you think with this Sanderson contract, do you think that sets a precedent for Guhle to get maybe another 8-year deal of his own worth $52 million?
You have to feel like Guhle's a guy that you want to keep around. Like, he almost has the makings of a young leader, and I get wanting to see what we have in the pipeline, and it's still, kind of early to maybe making some of these assessments. But I mean, Ottawa, you could make the argument that they did a home run kind of play and kind of solidifying that core, right?
Yeah.
We've been doing a great job of that with our forwards, with Caufield, with Suzuki, hooking them up with long-term deals. And you got to feel like one of our next plays might be with one of our really promising defensemen. And Guhle seems like obviously a great candidate for that. Again, like Reinbacher, just somebody whose game is very translatable. And again, a lot of comparisons with Sanderson, like you said, like they both 21, both 6'2". And I would argue, Sanderson does have a pretty good, strong defensive game as well, while still being maybe a little bit more of a playmaker. But Guhle is still like an amazing defensive player. I think that his offensive side will definitely come out more. Of course, this was just his first year in the NHL last year. And as we know, right, just somebody who looks so poised, looks so comfortable, experienced. Those are the type of players that you don't mind giving the longer term deals to. They just look good on the ice. They know what they're doing. He has a confidence and experience, but beyond his years, you would say, in the NHL, right? So obviously we're going to keep an eye on this, but with the cap going up, it is in the best interest often if you can get them in these longer term deals. It does seem to pay off. There is obviously still risk involved, but you kind of need to do that sometimes, just to have that continuity and really lock down those cornerstone pieces of your franchise.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I also agree that Sanderson probably has a higher peak potential than Guhle does. I mean, Sanderson looked phenomenal last year. And while Guhle did too, you're right, Jesse, though. I think Guhle really exuded that veteran confidence almost when he was on the ice, even though he was a rookie. He made very few mistakes. And even if he did, he often learned from him. And his offensive game was coming slowly and slowly and was getting better by the game until he got injured. His defensive zone awareness, he rarely made turnovers, right? And like you said, those kind of guys are the guys that you're okay with locking up long term, because you feel like even if they decline a bit in production or they don't quite reach the peak that you'd want, the fact that they're a solid guy who guaranteed Guhle's going to be that 20-minute a game kind of solid player, you're never really upset with that contract, even if they're not producing as much offensively. So, but yeah, I wanted to also ask you too, do you see Kent Hughes maybe trying to, I mean, we saw the Caufield extension, right? And we see Nick Suzuki is signed for long term. Do you see Kent Hughes maybe pulling the trigger early like the Senators did with Sanderson and signing someone like a Guhle, or maybe even if it's not this year, someone like maybe next year if we see Lane Hudson play a full year? Do you see him maybe going for these long-term extensions in a similar style to the Senators really early in these young guys' careers?
With Lane Hudson, I definitely say, even though I'm really big on him, there's still more of a risk of that just with the size.
Mm-hmm.
So in Lane's case, like even if he's coming out gangbusters in that first year, I still want to see second year a little bit. And then we're getting that second year, halfway through the second year, I think once you really know what you got in him, which I think is just confirming all of our suspicions at this point, then I think it's that point in time. With Guhle, there's a little bit less unknowns in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be willing to do that, but still it's such a fluid situation, even though on left defense, maybe we don't have as many like premium guys. We still have Matheson right now, who's obviously great. But we're going to just need to surveil what we kind of have there before making any type of decision. But you have to feel like you want to keep Guhle around long term. It seems like the Habs organization is already kind of modeling him for that and wants him to be part of that leadership group of Nick Suzuki, Cole Caufield, and Kaiden Guhle. It seems like they're kind of grooming him for that. So they feel like he's a long-term type of guy, and I think they have plenty of reasons to feel that way as well.
Yeah, future assistant captain, it sure feels that way, right? But yeah, I mean, the Habs don't really have the financial flexibility necessarily to do this quite yet. There's a lot of contracts left to figure out, but you got to think Kent Hughes sees this, Kaiden Guhle and his agent see this, and there might be a long-term deal in the works sometime very, very soon. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us reach 10,000 subs. We're getting close. Honestly, 8,000 would be really appreciated. You guys are doing awesome, and we really appreciate the support. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.